Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the DLC Drop podcast. Today it's my pleasure to welcome Terence Burke. He is the Senior VP of KidSay, which is a youth research company. They provide great data on what kids are doing in their play and their learning, and they do it in such a way that it benefits schools and their education. He's going to talk a lot about how they do that and also the trends that he's learned over 20 years of youth research. Let's talk to Terence. Drop in the untold stories of industry leaders, influencers, and insights on future innovation. I'm John Davidson, and this is the DLC Drop podcast. All right, Terence, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of the DLC Drop podcast. You and I have known each other, I want to say, maybe about a year now. I feel like we probably connected maybe mid-COVID, mid-pandemic.
Yeah, mid-pandemic.
And
something good came out of that.
That's right. I try to look at everything in life as a silver lining, and I would definitely describe our relationship as one of those silver linings. So to give a little bit of background for the audience, I got in touch with KidSay, which is an amazing youth research company. I've learned so much from what you guys have done. And a lot of what I do in my daily work is I'm connecting folks who are in the esports space along with folks who are, I call them complementary experts. People have a deep expertise that is greatly needed by the esports industry, but in the industry, we don't really have that capability or don't have that expertise. And as I learned what you guys do, how you do it, the data that you've procured, I just really see such a great opportunity for others in the industry to learn from you. So I'm so excited to have you on the podcast and really share, but why don't you set up for the audience first, in your words, who are you and what do you do?
Yeah, so I'm Terence Burke, as you introduced. I'm Senior VP of Research at KidSay, and I'm somebody who comes from, a passion of kids. At KidSay, our founder, Bob Reynolds, started as a school fundraiser. And so his model of kind of finding out information about what's happening in kids' lives comes from the genesis of it is his desire to help schools, do the things that the local school budget taxes don't cover, right? Field trips and music instruments and scholarships and more library books. And so he developed a network of schools throughout America where, principals get permission from parents and say, hey, instead of having your kid go out there and sell wrapping paper or chocolates, I want to ask them about their lives, right? They're going to answer some questions about what they like to do on the weekend and what's their favorite thing to do for friends, and given a screen, what do they most often do on it? And we as a school will get some money for that will be able to enhance the educational experience. And so it's really that model that it's kind of a side benefit of what I do that really kind of keeps me jazzed about the experience, because it really has, a real world impact.
It does. And that was one of the reasons, or, when I first learned about you guys, I got to know you guys, and you're great people, first of all. It's all about who you do it with, even more than what you do. But I saw some of your decks, I saw some of your reports, I was like, wow, there's a lot I'm learning from this. But the other part of it is the kids piece of it, right? There's always a lot of questions when it comes around how is data or research coming from children, and not just that obviously you guys are doing it legally, but the fact that you are doing it in such a way that it is safe and it's also beneficial for the kids and the people who help educate them really made me want to embrace you guys even more.
Yeah, thank you. It's really been at the heart of what we've done. When they started with COPA law, they actually, a legislator from California who put that bill before the Congress originally, gave Bob Reynolds a call and said, we've heard you guys are in schools and getting research from kids. That's really hard to find stuff because of all the regulations. Yeah. And so they actually used some of our kind of screeners and our permissions as a a model to say, this is the kind of way we should do it, right? It's got to be totally transparent.
Yeah.
Parents have got to be involved in this. It's got to be, we don't do any promotions. We don't do any selling. We are trying to find out about the lives of kids. And so, with that and the imprimatur of it being a school and principal to principal network saying, hey guys, because we're not going to go to the same kids again, right? Another advantage is we don't have professional survey takers, right? Research firms that looking for kids are so hard to find that if they've got a kid who, this kid answers questions, they're on their 58th survey that they've taken over the last 5 years or whatever,
Right.
We're going to schools and we know it's kids on the other end. We know it's not mom filling out because, Junior said he's going to do this survey. And, that benefit of knowing that it's kids and the quality, right? Professional researchers, when they're getting qualitative stuff from kids, the research firms who do the recruiting will ask, well, is your son loquacious? Is he one of the leaders of his group? And,
Sure.
Thankfully, moms and dads are biased and love their kids more generally, but have no real clue. When we, using our school network, we talk to principals and teachers who tell us, hey, if you want a kid who's the cutting edge that the other kids look to say they're the first one to be on what's the new game or what's the new sneaker or whatever it is, that qualitative difference in the recruiting and the fact that in pre-COVID times, but still today, we're in schools almost every day. We were conducting research on their turf, right? So they were real comfortable. They didn't get into the research facility and start swinging the chairs and looking around and trying to figure out. And they didn't have the alpha games, the alpha chimp, right? Of, if I say something, this kid I don't know across the way, are they going to think I'm a jerk, or how is their reaction going to be? Because we're in a school environment, working with kids where all those games have been played out already. Everyone is who they are. It is known. And the ethos of the environment is everyone's voice counts, right? They've been trained in that in the school to say, no, every voice counts. And so the quality of the qualitative research in the school environment is just another reason why, my time at KidSay has been so enriching.
That's incredible. So you're procuring this data in a great way, a way that is generating high quality data. It's good for kids. It's good for schools. So what are some of the industries that you're then working in? What are some of those brands who are clients who are coming to you and saying, hey, you really know what we want to find out so that we can best serve our target market?
So there are two industries that really we have the major kid players, right? It's entertainment and content,
yep.
Right? The major, and I know that some of them have said we can use their name, but I'm always reluctant to kind of say that. But the ones who said yes, it's not a problem. Nickelodeon and Disney have been, clients of ours for decades. In the toy and gaming world, Hasbro and Mattel and Spin Master have been our clients. We are kind of a conduit to them, to kids all the time. So in the toy space and in the entertainment, the content space, those have been our main drivers of our client. We've had food, we've had apparel, right? Anyone who says, I need to know kids to know my business,
sure, right,
has been somebody who can come to us and say, wow, right, these guys really help ground us in who kids are. I mean, I like to tell companies, I'm never going to know their business as well as they know their business.
Sure.
But if they need to know kids, they got to be grounded in their behaviors, their attitudes, the things that are influencing them. And if you are dipped in the ambient water of childhood, right, of what's happening with kids, you're going to walk back to your desk drenched in that knowledge. It might lead to a direct line from A to B to C because, we've got this data from kids. Sure. But there's this soft part of it that is, I know, what kids are doing on their free time. I know what they aspire to be. I know their favorite color. I know who's the influencer that they're most likely to go to. That stuff is going to permeate my understanding of my marketing, my product development, all of that. I mean, we worked with a shoe client. One of my favorite kind of insider stories was, one of the product development line and marketing team, when they got together, they would start in the days of only analog reports, right? Before everything was digitized in our dashboard, et cetera. Yeah. They would literally take the pages from the report and hang it around the room. And before the meeting started, the boss lady would said, you guys need to go around and take 10 minutes and refresh yourself with who we're designing for, who we're creating product for, know who they are, and then we'll start our meeting. And that was such a perfect kind of benefit that those who really get it, who will really understand that we're helping deliver them kids so that they can do their thing better, they can provide the kind of things that get kids excited, get kids juiced, that help kids on their journey, right, through life, because play and content, right, are not just things to be consumed by kids.
Correct.
They're things that kids use to understand themselves, to understand their world, to develop who they are, to play at new roles, new aspects of themselves. It's a key part of their development. And, I'm, really proud that that's the kind of work that we do.
That's incredible. I can see a major challenge, or perhaps a major gap between product managers or product developers and when the target market is children, right? I think in my world, which is esports, marketing, sports, and entertainment, we're seeing this where you have marketing executives who have marketed to themselves essentially for the last 20, 30 years, and they know what they're doing, they know what works, etc., until Gen Z shows up. And this is a group that's more skeptical than older generations. They're consuming content in very different ways than older generations. And so all of a sudden you've gone from, whoa, I knew what I was doing for 20, 30 years, and now the whole game has changed. I would think that would be an even greater challenge when it's not just a different generation, but it's a couple generations below. Is that something that you experience with your clients and what they come to you for?
Yes, all the time, John, and particularly you have the upper levels of management, of people who've earned their way up the ladder. Yeah. There might be 2 generations removed from those kids, but there's another aspect to it that everyone falls into the trap of. If we're the butterfly, kids are the caterpillar, right? They are an earlier stage of us, but they are so different.
Yes.
That butterfly really cannot put themselves into the experience of a caterpillar. Our brains have literally developed new connections, new neural pathways that we don't know what it's like to be an 8th grader or an 8-year-old, right? Yeah. We have a concept of it, but the brain processes, right? The kind of development of the neural networks have changed so dramatically that it's really a reflective speculation of what an 8-year-old is. An 8-year-old is processing the world at a different level. Now, kids are always going to be kids, right? Kids have always been kids from the birth of humanity.
Right.
What changes is what you hit on, the cultural prism that they express that kidness through, right? Mm-hmm. And so the double challenge, for the executives who make the decisions in the direction of the company is recognizing that I need to know the current cultural prism, and I need to be humble enough to say, even though I was an 8-year-old, I don't know how an 8-year-old works, because literally my brain is different, right? I have to think about the developmental, the cognitive differences, the ability to move gross and fine motor skills, right? We think little kids have little fingers. They should use a cell phone easier than they would a tablet because, they have little fingers, but they don't have the dexterity to do that. It's why a 5, 6, and 7-year-old needs a tablet and can't really game on a phone so well. The phone has to be set up for them, but on a tablet they can navigate. Even though you would think intuitively, smaller hands, smaller area, that should be fine. It actually makes it worse. And that's really just knowing about, the biological aspect of kid that really has an impact. particularly in the kind of gaming industry and the use of screens and manipulation of the variables. A 5-year-old needs 3 choices, right? Because my brain can work that. It's why game cards become a big thing, collecting cards or collecting Barbies or collecting whatever it is at about 9 years old. Before that, it's accumulation because their brain doesn't, get the variables, the intricacies of what makes it different, what makes it valuable. It's just, I've got more, because that's how they process the world. At 9 years old, they can rearrange the collections. They can reorganize what they're doing. And I know that's got to have a huge impact in the gaming world because of the screen levels and where you can get to and the things that you can buy. And a 6 and 7-year-old can't process all that information. It would be overwhelming for them. They need simpler, direct, fewer choices, and that works better for them. Whereas when they get into older, that's when you can play with the nuances.
That's super interesting. I'm beginning to understand in real time here why my 6-year-old son wants more dinosaurs when he has so many. Let me ask you this. This might be completely off topic, but what is it about dinosaurs in boys that are like 5 or 6 years old? Because first of all, my son knows more about dinosaurs than I ever would have known myself.
Amazing, huh?
It's incredible. Right. In fact, I'll tell you this quick story. We're at Target. So whenever we go grocery shopping at Target, we'll go to the toy aisle first. We'll kind of get that out of the system, go through the aisle. We're not buying anything. We're just window shopping. Right. We'll go through all the aisles, and he'll kind of play with each dinosaur toy, not too much so it doesn't ruin the box, of course. But kind of, look how this one moves, and we'll keep it in mind for birthday or Christmas coming up. And we're going through, and this was a couple of years ago, so he's about 4 years old. He's a bright kid. He's going through, and he's like, "Oh, look, it's a Parasaurolophus." And I was thinking, like, okay, that's a funny name that he made up, right? And then I read the title on the on the box, Parasaurolophus. I'm like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. Okay. I'm like, hey Johnny, check this. What's this one called? Just kind of testing him. Oh, that's a Pachycephalosaurus. I'm like, and I'm just, then, we got into it, we got, 10, 20 different dinos going down. But it just cracks me up. This kid is more into dinosaurs than anything I've ever seen in my life. I'm just very curious on a personal level. Is there anything about that age, boys specifically, that dinosaurs just pop with them?
Yeah, very much so. So, and this is really ties into the larger conversation that we as a society have had about kind of reframing our understanding of gender, right? The understanding of gender as a spectrum that people can land on at any place, right? And this is one of the things that's really interesting about both Gen Z and Gen Alpha coming up behind them, is for them that's an intuitive sense, right? They've gotten the message and they look at each other in general as, oh yeah, you do you, wherever you are in that journey. It's much, much different than certainly my generation, generations before me and after me, right, in their way. But there are, the reasons that there are those two diametrically, I wouldn't say diametrically opposed, but those polar kind of attractors with dinosaurs and superheroes and trucks, right? You like, so, why has that been something that has gone through basically time to say that's a thing that boys in general find themselves gravitating to? Right. And it's about, because scientists have argued it, and sociologists and psychologists have argued it. We could argue it all day about is it nature or nurture, right? Is it biological or is it environmental? And the smart folks sit back and say, well, it's really both. And sometimes it's hard to see which way it gets manifested, but it's both. And so in general, the expression for a young boy to say, I feel this thing about exerting myself outside of me, particularly in a way of a powerful device, right? A truck, a superhero, or a dinosaur are monster iterations of this idea of, I bestride the world in a way right? That is big and large and wherever. And so, we see it time after time, right? We see it with boys. We see girls, again, a vast generalization here.
Sure.
They will drift towards the princess mode, right? Disney has made an empire on recognizing that that's the way it is, right? And again, it's wide open, right? The change that I have loved and I have seen is that instead of those trucks and dinosaurs and superheroes being, no, those are for boys, the recognition is, no, those are for kids. And whoever wants to go there, go and play and have fun and judgment less and wherever. And so it's opened up the possibility for the girls to play with trucks without, any kind of judgment, and the boys to play with princesses or Barbies. And the society has starting to come to say, hey, you know what? Everyone's on their journey. We still struggle, I think, more so with, when I first started in this field, it was girls embracing what were considered boy qualities was seen as an addition to. Like, so I'm still girl, but my desire to compete in sports and to my ambition to be successful or to build, like, it was like, well, Legos aren't a girl thing. Like, what? Right? The addition of those qualities was seen as a positive, right? A growth thing, where there was real fear of, if a boy embraces community or gentleness, that was seen as a negative thing. And it's something our society is still working out. But, I've seen tremendous growth. And the place I've seen it most is in kids in school. It is so amazing to me to see the changes wrought by these two generations. I mean, I'm generally an optimistic person, but I'm really optimistic about the generations to come, because I think they're both their desire to make the world a better place and their feeling of, I have a responsibility in that, are really strong. And I think as far as stewards are concerned, I think we're in good hands. There will be challenges, like every generation will face challenges, and overcoming hurdles that are, that technologies giveth and taketh, right? Is going to be a challenge for this generation, but I'm really optimistic.
Me too. All I know is just about every moment I have with my son, he's like, what dinosaur are you? And let's fight. So
right. Yeah,
that's a lot of fun. I'd love to get into, you talked a little bit about technology there, and, you've been procuring research from kids for about 21 years, I believe. And so the amount of technology that has changed in that time, boy, I'm sure that has just really changed kids' behaviors, how they manifest those behaviors, how they're influenced, how they discover things. Why don't you take me through a little bit about the changes in trends over the years according to technology?
So it's really funny, because I still think on this meeting, I was at Hamburger University. I was asked to come in and help kind of ground McDonald's in Happy Meal age kids, like who they were, what, kind of some of the things we're talking about now. What are the things that a kids that age, what do they aspire to? Their Hot Wheel Barbie Happy Meal toy thing, which so much speaks to exactly what we just talked about, right? That idea. And so they had asked me to come in and talk to them. And it was right around the time where digital photography had started to get in the layman's hands, right? A 1.8 megapixel camera, digital camera was like, $555 or whatever. But, the early adapters had one. And somebody
I used to sell those cell phones. I remember that 1 megapixel camera on the cell phone that I had in my cell phone store. And boy, I was trying to hawk that thing. I think it was about $400 before inflation.
Somebody in the audience said, do you think kids are ever going to have these things? And I said, yeah, of course they will. And I heard like a groan, no way, I was doing. And I said, look at the history of technology. Things get smaller, they get more portable, they get more affordable. And so, a couple of years later, when the 4.1 megapixel camera came down and this 1.8 was now obsolete, well, what did you do? An easy win was to hand it down to your kid. You had no film costs or anything. Right. They could have fun, they could play, right? So we first started seeing it in KidSay with digital cameras, right? That's when I was in the field. I mean, I could go back in history and tell you about the boombox and the Walkman. And when I was a kid, the stereo was a big piece of furniture in my living room, right? To see the changes, right?
Sure.
But we started seeing it kids first with digital cameras. Then we started to see it with the iPod and then the cell phone. How do you be, oh, my contract is up. I've got this phone and I can add a line for, at the time, I think it was $5 a month. They were saying to add a new line if you upgrade a phone. I could give my 11-year-old daughter a phone and be a hero for $5 a week or $5 a month and get all the benefits of, you know, contact with her and all that other thing. And she would be like, out of the moon, I'm going to do it.
Sure.
So we have seen, right, from the camera to the phone to the tablet, a passing down of technology, and even to now, like we do kids 5 to 7 directly, interview them one-on-one, 350, 400 kids twice a year. The larger groups, the 8 to 15-year-olds, we're doing a couple thousand quarterly. But we just implemented a report that's coming out with moms and dads who have a 2 to 4-year-old and an older kid, because we're looking to try to find the differences between, so is there an age break where the rules are different, your engagement is different? Because we know it is in upper grades. We know that after about the age of 9, parents have said, I recognize my kid's going to be able to get any of this information and manipulate around whatever controls I put in there. If they can't do it here at my house, they're going to get to do it at friend's house, or they're going to get to do it somewhere. I have to instill the values I want. I have to keep open lines of communication in there and hope they can navigate it, right? And so this notion of, you know, this passing down of technology has been a real interesting thing for us, because we're seeing now in the 5 to 7-year-olds what we saw with the 8 to 11-year-olds with the tweens 5, 6 years ago. And what we saw with the tweens, we saw with the teens 5 to 6 or actually maybe even 2 to 3 years ago. We see the sweep of what happens just now. You know, a few years back, I think it was 5 years in looking back at some of our historical data, 5 years ago, of the top 10 favorite apps of 5 to 7-year-olds, there was one that was not a game. It was YouTube. That was the only one. The other 9 top 10 were all games, or Candy Crush Saga and Subway Surfer or whatever. You look at the list now, and you're talking about one content provider in YouTube, really, and then you're talking only 2 games. You got Roblox, right, as one of them, and you've got I'm trying to think of the other one at the top.
Minecraft.
But the shift for kids, even at that young age, to go to saying that I'm going to social media, I'm going to TikTok, right, or I'm going to Snapchat to get the things that I like the most. It's not that they're not gaming still on those apps. They still are. But it's the one that is like their favorite, their go-to one, their raison d'etre for getting on the phone is connection to fun content and connection to friends. And that's a major shift that we have seen. I was kind of surprised. I expected, just like those developmental levels that prevent a kid from being able to manipulate a cell phone at the age of 5, where they can at the age of 8, right?
Sure.
Quite adeptly. I expected to see that there would be a wall where the social media would not get below like the age of 8.
Sure.
And I've been surprised that it has, right? The penetration for them regarding those social media and kids responding to that and finding the kind of fun and content that they want on it has been really illuminating for me.
That's really interesting. Can you talk a little bit about, because there's pros and cons to everything, right? And
right.
So I'm sure what some of your realizing in your research is essentially, hey, these are positive things. These are how young people are engaging in content. They're engaging in brands. Right. This is how they're finding their friends. There's drawbacks to everything. I think very recently we've seen a lot of drawbacks in the news with social media, and that's
right.
typically around the adult age. But what are some of the pros and cons that you see with technology that we should have an eye out for?
Well, it's interesting. I was in a high school in suburban New York this week having a discussion with kids from a group of 14 and 15-year-olds and then a group of 16 to 17-year-olds just based on this conversation, right? Leading in with, so these are the, the revelations that came through this week on particularly we were focusing on Instagram and the report of the harm that it does to teen girls. And so those conversations about what are the benefits that you receive, right, from kids, what are the benefits you receive, and what are the problems you see? And so almost universally, they talked about the toxicity of some of the networks, right? That the posting on something is something that they viscerally respond to, and they have a hard time avoiding it because in order to be relevant in their circle, they need to be in social.
Right.
And so how do they get the benefits of social, the connection to friends, both the friends that they also have proximity to, that they extend the playground to at home and wherever, but also to the friends that they have developed around specific interests, whether it be games, and a lot of it is gaming, whether it be lifestyle, whether it be movies, whether it be bands, right? Those larger connections they love, right? It kind of allows them to explore the passion that they have as they're developing a richer sense of themselves. Social media gives them that opportunity to find those little niches that, these people get me, right? Mm-hmm. This is a place that they understand me and I'm valued, and that's great. And there's the toxicity, right? And that's why, over the last couple of years, I've been hearing from a lot of kids of why they like Discord so much, because they have more control over who they get led into and invite into small little circles so that they can know and create some of these environments where they're in control and they can monitor and keep the toxicity at bay, right? Keep the anonymous toxic folks out there, because they recognize that that's unfortunately a part of their their social engagement culture, and they don't like it, right? And so how do they get involved and stay involved in these larger kind of social media places? What we have seen is a small considering of concentric circles. So it started a long time ago with actually it started with MySpace and Friendster is when we first got that information. This is this large circle. And then once, Facebook came around, it was still a large a circle, but not as large.
Sure.
And if grandma's on it, I don't know if I want to be on it, right? Mm-hmm. And so Instagram comes along, and that becomes a smaller circle of intimates. But then Instagram and its ethos of this perfect life, right? I'm showing my best self, right? The pressure of that, right? In talking to kids about it's almost like an addiction that somebody will have, right? To seek a drug, to get the tension that builds up before I send off my Instagram, is the tension of somebody who has an addiction and needs to get that substance in them, that tension that builds up until I get it. When I get it, I get that release temporarily. That was what was happening with kids on Instagram, right? They would get this, because I have to on Instagram post a picture that is really flattering and puts me in the best light and presents my life as this thing, and there's tension. And what are the comments going to be? And, beautiful, is that real, or is that what I know because I have to respond it to everyone? Are these kids really giving me the likes because I deserve them, or is this, the perfunctory likes because we're all supposed to do that tension and that worry builds and builds. They hit the release button, right? They send that picture out. They get a temporary reprieve from it. It's out. And then the tension regarding the likes comes back.
And the comments, right? Right.
And that's why they turned to Snapchat. Because Snapchat was none of that. Snapchat was actually the exact opposite. I'm going to show you at my silliest. I can put in my ugliest faces. I can do all the kind of the goofy stuff and the weirdo filters, and it's so much less pressure and so much more fun. And that's where Snapchat steps in and takes it, and that becomes an even smaller circle of friends who I can trust that. And then comes TikTok into the void, and TikTok has a kind of a different model of really I'm providing entertainment content in short little bits. It's less about necessarily me connecting to friends directly, although there's an element of that. It's just this wide open, kind of really new niche in there. And so as far as the kind of negatives of social, right, these kids know it. Fortunately, Gen Alpha is going to have the first generation of parents who've actually navigated it themselves.
Interesting.
Right? Who will be able to help guide them a little bit and to say, hey, here's the beauty of it and here's the traps. And I'm going to try to help you navigate this. And because I know my way around the phone, I can help you and establish some of these parameters and do things along those lines. So I think that will be beneficial to kids. Gen Z didn't really have that. They had parents who were kind of there, but had not grown up in that environment so much. Right. They came to it more as adults than experienced it as kids themselves. But Gen Alpha is going to have parents who lived it and kind of know it and will be able to help guide them a little bit more.
Sure, and I'm sure Gen Alpha will also have new things that have not even been invented yet that, of course, their parents hadn't experienced. But, I think about that sometimes too, being a parent myself is, of course, when I went through high school, it was in the late 90s, early 2000s. And, you have the pressure of popularity, what people say about you, what people think about you on top of your school studies and things of that nature. But I cannot even imagine stacking on top of all of those things how many followers I have. Susie stopped following me. So-and-so is following somewhere else. Why didn't they like my last photo? Why did you like her photo?
Right.
And all of these other things. And, we see a lot of mental health awareness. Yeah. And part of me wonders, I think part of it's good that the stigma has dropped off about talking about it. But the other part of me wonders, is this technology driving a lot more mental health concerns than past generations have experienced because they've had different issues?
Right. So the data, from scientists who are at another level than my data research, right? Those folks tell us that, yes, it is. It has contributed. I mean, if you look at just the correlation of numbers, right? It's not causal, but you see on the increase, and that increase almost lays right over the advent of social, right? Of pervasive social media use. The other part of it, John, is when you walked away from school, it was pretty much over, right? Yeah. It ended, right? You could walk in the door at home and be like, I left all that pressure behind.
Good point.
It doesn't end for these kids because they're just opening up their screen away from being thrown right back into the middle of it. And without, right, this is the part that science tells us. We developed as humans in a social environment where we read the cues of somebody's facial expressions.
Right.
We could regulate and understand what was being said on that. You can't always on a text, right? You bring into reading the nuances on it on your own sometimes, right? That's where emojis have stepped in and tried to help with that. And that's why they took off, because they did that when we couldn't do it. But the other part is, if you're a step removed from the pain that you cause by a comment, you're not going to make that comment in person because you feel that right in the moment, and you get the jolt of, oh geez, what did I just say or do? That was really mean, and it makes me uncomfortable. Sure. The screen and social media has made, diminishes that. And so we know that from looking at that, and that's why one of the reasons why the mental health issues come up with kids and social, right? That's the negative part of it. The positive is the inclusiveness and find my group and explore, particularly for some kids who used to be marginalized, right? LGBTQ community, who specifically had been in like small towns and felt like there's nobody like me, and the pressure of that now can find like-minded folks to kind of feel like, oh yeah, I am a part of a larger group, and that feels good. So yeah, it giveth and it taketh away. And it's something that, we have as a society have to, we're learning. When you looked at those congressional hearings this week, right? That's a group, to your point earlier about those guys and men and women were generally in their 60s or 70s. They never lived through any of this. They had to be educated about it. And there was a great shot, I think it was on John Oliver or one of the comedians, who showed one of the aides behind the lead guy just like roll his eyes when the senator was talking about Finstead, had no idea what he was talking about. And
right.
Just the roll of the eyes of the aide who was in his 20s or maybe young 30s, who was like, oh my goodness, please don't go there. You don't know what you're talking about, right? We as a society have to come to grips, and those who make the decisions and those who make the rules and the laws really have to make way for those who really know what they're talking about to say, what can we do here? Can we regulate this in a way that allows for growth and creativity, but also diminishes some of the toxic quality on that? That's something we as a society have to decide.
I agree. I want to shift just a little bit here. Before we end our episode, I want to get some takes on some of the significant trends that either you've learned recently that either been impactful to you, maybe they've surprised you, or some of your clients have really responded to and have been very valuable to them. What are the things that you're learning right now from the surveys that you're doing in schools?
Sure. So one of the things that, my clients are most concerned about is what's coming next, right? Which is true, right? One of the things our trackers do is give a great snapshot of what's happening now with kids. Mm-hmm. But the beauty of that, if you lay those snapshots down, that gives you an idea to be able to say, so what's coming next? Particularly if as my grounding is in therapeutic education, right? So I know those kind of social, emotional kind of things that happen at different ages that are really important to them, why friends become really essential to essence of who they are around the age of 13 for boys, 11 for girls. They're always important, but all those kind of markers. And so the thing that my clients are wondering about, so what's that next? Where's all this change leading to? And that's keeping them awake at night is the metaverse, right? Particularly game folks and content folks are saying, all right, so we're hearing a lot about it. We know that those who are on the cutting edge are dipping not only their toes in, but they're jumping in to be prepared for this. How do I get prepared for it? How do I integrate myself? I'm not a tech company. I'm not one of these. I'm a gaming company, or I've got content, but it's not in this place. And so how do I integrate my content in a way that feels authentic? And it's not just me trying to tack something on, which never works. Kids can smell that out from a million miles, right? Malcolm Gladwell did the whole idea of that he got from the Swedish sociologist about the 10,000 hour rule of making you an expert, right? Where you were. I talk about the kids in the 10,000 image rule, right? They have seen so many images and so many posts from friends and family that they know are authentic. When a brand comes at them and in a way that's clearly, I'm trying to speak kid, but I'm not, right? And I don't know the lingo and I don't know the format for this platform. They know right away, they don't even have to think about it. They just go, oh gosh, swipe, right? Get out of here, skip, right?
Hello, fellow kids.
Yeah. And so it's how do they navigate that metaverse? Because we've seen the Robloxes and we've seen the Fortnites integrate kind of entertainment, integrate social meeting aspects, integrate things into this gaming world where, again, if we can give a kid all that they want in diversity in this environment, why would they leave it?
Right.
Right. There's, huge streams and possibilities there. And that's where companies are really saying, I need to know what this is. I need to know how to authentically engage it and what my role can be, if any, in it.
Yeah, I think one thing I've seen a lot in my work in the esports space is that young people are not seeing a difference between physical experience and physical goods and digital experience and digital goods. They value them the same. Sometimes you could argue the digital may be more valuable to them. This is really why the rapid rise of NFTs has happened recently. Gamers for years have paid a lot of money to get those unique exclusive items in game. And people just haven't really understood that until recently.
Right.
And then
Yeah.
as you see with the metaverse, it's now, okay, I can go into this world. It's very aspirational. I can be
Yes.
whatever I want. I can be whoever I
Yeah.
want. And now I can really start to access the physical world in the digital worlds that I love to enjoy.
Yeah, and it fits right into the conversation we had earlier about them kind of being and becoming and all the things that content and toys can do. This does it in another realm, right? It extends that experience and in fact opens it up to be even more creative and more play, like in me playing at trying to understand who I am and experiencing the world as a new me. And that's really, really, really powerful. And it's going to attract kids. The more that they can provide, companies or platforms can provide experiences that allow those. And here's the key, I think, will be, and trust that they can let it go somewhat, right? And allow kids to start to shape it, right? And to create what they want instead of a top-down kind of way. Allow it organically to grow and kind of provide kids with the tools and the things they need, just like they build their Minecraft worlds, right? Provide the tools that they need to create this new environment. The more they can do that, the more enriching it will be for kids.
Yeah, that's something that you've touched on a few times during this episode is whether you worded it as humility, for CEOs or other ways, is simply, it sounds like, not assuming that you know best, listening, learning.
Yeah.
I've talked to some really high-profile leaders in the past, and one of the things that kind of blow my mind, I kind of understand the esports and gaming audiences organically because I come from the skateboarding world. And in skateboarding, it's a more extreme version of skepticism of outside brands than gaming.
You pay for it.
Right. So I come to gaming and esports and I say, wait a minute, this totally makes sense to me. In fact, it's a lot easier. All you need to do is enhance experiences in meaningful ways. And you can go to the community, you can ask them what they want, and then you do it. And so I actually had an amazing experience. I was able to host a roundtable with Gary Vaynerchuk, a digital roundtable during COVID sometime. It was a private thing. We interviewed a bunch of different people. And I was like, man, I got this guy in the room. He's one of the best in marketing. And I said, Gary, why is it that it seems so simple that you can just ask the audience what they want and then give it to them? And he said, John, 98% of CEOs think that they know best and they're not even willing to ask. And that just blew my mind. But you've touched on it a number of times during our discussion here. What is it about that or other characteristics, maybe some value we can give the audience to say, do these things and trust me, your business will do better?
Well, and so it might be an echo of what I said earlier, particularly because of you are no longer a kid, right? Biologically and cognitively.
Yeah.
And you came up through a different prism, right? A cultural prism that where you express your childhood in a very different way. And so I love the word you use, right? Have the humility to say, okay, if I recognize those two things, then I need to go and understand that prism and talk to kids and hear what they have to say, right? Mm-hmm. We at KidSay, we hope to bridge that gap. An executive at a major toy company said, the reason why we engage you is you give us the direct line to kids. You keep us grounded in that. So when we're making these decisions, we have to look back and say, so what are the kids saying about this? And so that idea of, humility to listen, it'll be amazing because they want you to provide them these fun things. Right. And if you do, they're more than willing to engage you, right? They have autonomy to be able to do that. And so when their needs and desires are met by your listening to their needs and desires, kismet.
There you go. There you go. It's amazing. Well, I want to touch on one more thing that is actually a very physical trend. I have touched on this a little bit. I've seen it pop up in the past, maybe go away, and now it's coming back, and I'm talking about wearables. What are you seeing in the wearable space that we can look out for either in the very near future or a little further down the road? So
this has been something that seemed to me to be just what we just discussed about needs and desires meeting somebody providing it with them. Mm-hmm. And I've been waiting for, that killer application of a wearable that would, just be seamless into helping kids, find their way in the world and enjoy what they're doing. At the early stages of gaming, we saw those where you wore a wristband that was like a motion tracker, and whatever the motion you got, you could plug in, and you would get the bonus on that would kick you up a level. Was a great concept of that. But it was Tim Cook a couple of years ago at one of the Apple events where he talked about the thing he's most excited about is the glasses. Now, we saw Google try that experiment. Maybe they were too far ahead of the time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We saw Snapchat try it, and maybe they were too ahead of the time. But every time Apple's come out with a revolution, besides the Newton, although that was way too ahead of its time to make it to work, right? But they redefined a space by finding a way, right, to make this thing really enhance their experiences. And I can see wearable play, especially in the metaverse, right, where there's a seamlessness to those two things as one of the next big the next big thing in this place. The other one I'm waiting for is home speaker. Where's it going to be the integration, right? We know that the saturation of the home speaker has been around for a while, but as when we talk to kids, they say, "Oh yeah, my dad listens to music on it," or we hear there hasn't been the ones that are for them necessarily. There's some that are out there that are starting to, but that are really kind of that home speaker and gaming. Right, a combination of a narrative and a this and a that. I'm really excited to see what possibilities may emerge from those.
That's interesting as far as audio goes. Audio is very important in gaming. If you look at gaming headsets, you'll see that they're advertising 360 sound. There's games where you can hear the footsteps behind you, so when your enemy is behind you. Both the PS5 and the new Xbox have come out with 360 sound or immersive sound. I can't remember exactly the marketing term that they used. But yeah, that's really interesting when you talk about the speaker. The challenge that I think around that is, what if I don't want to hear my kid's music in the same way he doesn't want to hear mine all day?
I'm also waiting for the ubiquitousness of the VR headset. It's still very niche. Yeah. I know they're still working on some of the biofeedback issues with that. But I think, particularly with events, talk about the metaverse, right? Mm-hmm. Put a kid in an NBA game on courtside, or in a concert on stage with Ariana Grande, or those kind of things that are just beyond the gaming space. I see real possibilities. I see it in the field of education. Drop a kid into Grand Canyon and do rock study for earth science, or on the battlefield at Saratoga and look around and have augmented reality of the battle scene. I see all those possibilities. I'm waiting for them to come around.
Yeah, I'm a bigger fan in augmented reality, AR, than virtual reality, VR. I think a couple things, the cost for VR, the headsets. The biggest thing to me, though, and it sounds a little funny, but I think this is maybe the biggest barrier to entry, is simply the fact that you can't do anything other than VR when you're doing VR. I'm afraid to put that headset on, have my friend take a funny picture of me or slap me in the head while I can't see him, But if I've got, whether it's glasses or it's my phone in front of me for augmented reality, we see multitasking is something that continually picks up, right? It used to be just one screen. Now marketers have a second screen approach, and now I've heard you're talking about third screen, or there's a third thing that you're doing. And I think virtual reality taking away the ability to multitask is actually a great detractor from the adoption to it, in addition to some of the cost.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I never thought of it that way, but that makes a lot of sense to me. And it reinforces why I was really, we saw with Pokemon Go and what a success AR, right? That kind of blew the model up of like, oh, wow, yeah. And that's why I was wondering about glasses, because they are not the VR experience. And there's a safety and a concern issue regarding personal space. I need awareness of what's right. To be separated from what's around me feels foreign, right? It feels can be disconcerting. But augmented reality, I'm still aware of my kind of surroundings in that way, and so I can integrate it more into my everyday life. And so I'm really interested to see where that goes.
Yeah, with the Google Glass, I think one of the big pushbacks was that you could really actually identify people, whether it was their social media profile or some sort of information based on analyzing their facial features, something like that. And so people were pushing back on, wait a minute, you're coming into this bar or this restaurant or this room with those on. And so I'm curious of two things: either not having that capability, I'm sure they could always add it, right, with an app or something like that. But the second is we have a trend of not valuing our privacy. In fact, I remember when I was in college at Sacramento State, go Hornets, I took a technology class, and I remember the professor, he was bordering on conspiratorial, and I think it was unfortunate that he was a little bit of an odd personality because we really didn't take him very seriously because he was a little weird. But if he was trying to drive home one message to our class, that message was, do not get used to losing your privacy.
Wow, yeah, that's interesting.
And I think the more technology emerges, shoot, I'm about to, update my iPhone overnight tonight. Who knows what I'm agreeing to, right? I'm not going to read all that, nor does anybody.
Right.
And then
and kids certainly don't.
Right. And so, you grow up in that world where you've just clicked, I read this whole agreement, even though you haven't even scrolled the page, and you don't even know a world where privacy exists. And so, we won't get into all the concerns of that, but that might actually be a sentiment that enables a glasses app or interactive glasses to come in, where previously when Google tried to do it, there was pushback.
Yeah, that's interesting. I know for kids, what you said, for we as adults, right? They don't even bother. They don't even think about that issue, right? It's about the convenience. That group of kids I was talking to in high school in New York just this week, the idea of, if you're getting it for free, you're the product, right? And that seeing their minds kind of go like, oh, right. So, that's what I'm agreeing to. I'm agreeing to be the product. Sure, I get all these benefits out of it, but what am I giving up in that because I am the product?
That's a great analogy. That really opened my mind right there. I've never thought about it that way. Well, hey, I could talk to you forever, Terrence, but we're about at the end of our episode here, but I want to enable the audience to be able to connect with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to share all of these tremendous trends and insights. So how can people continue to learn from you and KidSay?
So they can email me at tburke, B-U-R-K-E, at kidsay.com, one word. And they can go to our website and get an idea of the kind of the services we provide and how we can help them kind of know kids so that they can serve them better.
That's awesome. Yeah, I definitely encourage everybody listening and watching this episode, please check them out. You're going to learn a ton, whether you're just curious about the latest trends or whether you have a business that can really learn from this and continue to serve the next generation. So, Terrence, thank you so much for joining me today on the DLC Drop podcast.
Thanks, John. It's always a pleasure talking with you, and today was a lot of fun.
Thanks. Thank you for listening to the DLC Drop podcast. This podcast is part of the Esports Futuri Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review.